For over 6 decades, one of America's greatest prison break mysteries held its secrets behind cold steel bars, frigid bay waters, and the legend of the island known simply as the Rock. But today, in 2025, that legend may finally have reached its end. Welcome back to The Extreme Discovery, where we dig into the unsolved, the unexplained, and now the perhaps solved case of the Alcatraz escape. 3 men vanished from Alcatraz on the night of June 12, 1962. No bodies found, no conclusive evidence. But now, scientists, investigators, and new technology are converging. And the outcome? Stunning. Buckle up, because what we're about to show you rewrites a chapter of American criminal history. The night that shocked America. The waves crashed violently against the jagged rocks surrounding the island fortress known as Alcatraz. For decades, this isolated piece of land in San Francisco Bay was a symbol of hopelessness, a place where escape was not just forbidden, it was unthinkable. The icy currents, razor-sharp rocks, and unpredictable tides made the water surrounding the prison as deadly as the walls themselves. The authorities were certain no one could ever leave the Rock alive. But in June 1962, that belief shattered forever. Inside one of the narrow, dimly lit cells of Block B, a man named Frank Morris sat awake long after lights out. Morris was not like the other inmates. He was quiet, calculated, and patient, the kind of man who saw patterns where others saw walls. With an IQ that ranked in the top 2% of the population, he understood systems, pressure, and timing. He had spent his life slipping through cracks, literally and metaphorically, and now he was about to test the biggest system of them all, Alcatraz itself. Frank had been transferred to Alcatraz after escaping from multiple prisons across the country. Every time he was caught, he learned something new. Something about structure, about vigilance, about how to move unseen. But here, in the heart of the most secure prison in America, even the guards underestimated him. They saw a quiet man who kept to himself, reading and sketching. They had no idea he was mapping his way to freedom. A few cells down were John and Clarence Anglin, brothers from Georgia, skilled in one thing above all else: escape. They grew up swimming in icy lakes, working with their hands, building, repairing, and surviving. The Anglin brothers had been captured during a bank robbery gone wrong, but even in prison, they remained inseparable. When they met Frank Morris, something unspoken clicked into place. 3 men with the same dream, the same patience, and the same understanding of the impossible. For months, the trio worked in silence. They built an escape plan that bordered on madness. The walls of Alcatraz were believed to be solid concrete, but behind the air vents at the back of their cells was something the builders hadn't anticipated: an old service corridor, narrow but passable. Using spoons stolen from the cafeteria, sharpened and reinforced with makeshift drills powered by vacuum cleaner motors, they began chipping away at the crumbling cement. Every night, the faint scraping of metal echoed behind the sound of music from the prison band practice. Guards heard nothing. It wasn't just the digging. They needed a way out of the prison, across the freezing bay, and onto the mainland without being seen. For that, they built one of the most ingenious escape tools ever made, a raft made entirely out of raincoats. They collected more than 50 of them, stolen or traded from other inmates. The raincoats were stitched and sealed using heat from steam pipes, turning rubberized fabric into watertight seams. They even built life vests and paddles from scrap wood and rubber tubes. Every piece of the puzzle came together slowly, piece by piece, hidden in plain sight. In the mornings, the men hid their tools and debris inside hollowed-out accordions or behind fake vents painted to match the wall. They created dummy heads from soap, toothpaste, and real human hair stolen from the barbershop. At night, when guards made their rounds, the heads lay on their pillows, lifelike enough to fool anyone glancing through the bars in dim light. By June 1962, the plan was ready. Years of watching tides, studying patrols, and testing tools
all came down to one night. The 11th of June was cold, dark, and eerily quiet. The wind howled through the corridors as Morris whispered to the Anglin brothers, "It's time." One by one, they crawled through the vent holes carved behind their sinks, slipping into the narrow corridor that led up to the roof. The walls scraped their clothes, the sound of distant footsteps froze their blood, but they kept moving. Above them, the roof hatch was their last barrier between captivity and the unknown. When they finally reached the roof, the moonlight hit their faces like freedom itself. They looked down at the courtyard below, 100 feet of solid concrete that could kill them in an instant if they fell, but they didn't hesitate. They slid down a vent pipe, crossed the fence, and reached the island's north shore. There, hidden beneath a cluster of rocks, was the raft they had spent months building. The men inflated it using a stolen concertina. Then, without a word, they pushed off into the black water. The bay was unforgiving. The current was strong, pulling them toward the open ocean. The water temperature hovered around 50 degrees Fahrenheit, cold enough to cause hypothermia within minutes. But they paddled anyway, using everything they had left, the lights of San Francisco flickering faintly in the distance like a promise. And then they vanished.
By morning, the discovery sent shockwaves through Alcatraz. Guards stormed the cells, expecting to find sleeping men. Instead, they found the dummy heads, the eerie, smiling faces resting on pillows. When they lifted the heads and saw the holes in the walls, panic set in. The alarm blared across the island. Helicopters scoured the bay, boats combed the surface. All they found were a few floating pieces of rubber and a homemade paddle. The FBI immediately launched one of the largest manhunts in history. For 17 years, they followed every lead, interviewed families, and examined every possible clue. Officially, the Bureau's conclusion was simple. The men drowned. The currents were too strong, the water too cold, the odds too impossible. But not everyone believed that. The Anglin family received Christmas cards signed with familiar handwriting. There were blurry photographs, alleged sightings in Brazil, and whispers of new lives built under false names. The mystery only deepened. For decades, the escape of Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers remained one of America's greatest unsolved puzzles. Movies were made, books were written, theories flooded the internet. But nothing concrete ever proved they survived or that they didn't. Until now. In early 2025, a digital archive leak from a private investigative firm revealed something extraordinary. Hidden among decades of classified correspondence were photographs, reports, and documents that had never been seen by the public. Among them was a letter sent to the San Francisco Police Department in 2013, but never released. The letter read, "My name is John Anglin. I escaped from Alcatraz in June 1962 with my brother Clarence and Frank Morris. I'm 83 years old and in bad shape. This is no joke." The letter went on to describe details that only the escapees could have known, including the layout of the cell block, the tools used, and even the type of glue used on the raincoat raft. The FBI dismissed it at the time, claiming handwriting analysis was inconclusive. But in 2025, a new forensic AI system reanalyzed the letter, and the results shocked everyone. The AI's probability model indicated a 98% match between the handwriting and known samples from John Anglin. That single finding reignited the entire investigation. For the first time in over 60 years, experts began to wonder, what if they really did make it? What if they walked away from Alcatraz that night and disappeared into history? Reporters flooded San Francisco, demanding answers. The U.S. Marshals Service, which technically still holds an open warrant for the men, issued a brief statement saying they were reviewing the new evidence. Meanwhile, a separate team of private divers discovered a new anomaly off the coast of Angel Island, an underwater shape roughly matching the size and structure of the homemade raft described in prison records. The raft, preserved under layers of sediment, was tested and dated. The rubber material matched raincoats issued to Alcatrazinates in the early 1960s. As the discovery spread across the internet, one truth became undeniable. The story of Alcatraz was not finished. Every expert who once said impossible now had to confront a terrifying possibility. The perfect prison had failed. And somewhere out there, maybe, 3 ghosts from 1962 had lived long enough to see their names cleared. But what happened after that night? Where did they go? Who helped them? And why did the FBI work so hard to bury certain reports? Those questions lead to the next chapter of this mystery. The trail of clues stretching from California to South America, where strange photographs, unmarked graves, and a hidden message may finally reveal what happened to the men who defied the rock.